125 Club. We had fabulous results in 21-22. Thank you, Mike. And Ingrid, I think you ran that campaign. And of course, in 22-23, we are still reaching out and asking those who decided maybe to reconsider giving. So if you haven't given to the 125 Club, and maybe now is a good time, we're still accepting those donations. Okay. Next up, I've asked Lori to come in and talk about our onboarding process for new members, because I think we've brought some great new members on board, but maybe us older members aren't quite clear on what we're to do and how that works. So Lori's going to go through a quick review of that. Lori? Sure.
All right, while he's bringing that up, I just want to say thanks to everybody who met on this new onboarding process. So thank you, Mike and Claudia and Susan and Ingrid and Kent. I don't know if I missed anybody, but thank you all for pulling this together. It definitely was a team effort, and I think it will help the onboarding process go smoothly for all new members that join us. So if you take a look at this PowerPoint, trust me, this won't be a long drawn out presentation, but the first thing is obviously we welcome. So the intake is usually through me on the website or through a lot of folks who are in this room. So thanks to everybody who have sent in new members. So the welcome happens. I'll follow up with them and get them the application. I know, Scott, you're going through this process right now. So we get the application and then the board approves, and then the fees are collected via Amy versus via a link. Once that happens, I send them over to Mike Isler, who gets them excited and jazzed up for the overview forms for 2 more months. And I'll point that out too. For 2 more months, Lori will also pass that over to Kurt Brown. And then he'll also go through the checklist. So the new members understand all the different steps that they have to take to become a member. We'll have the induction at the meeting then. And then we'll pass to Kent Underwood, who can help them continue their process and their journey through Rotary to get all their checks on their onboarding checklist. So once that happens, we have progress on the checklist each and every month. Kent will meet with them, and then there'll be an alert to have the badge removed. And then we'll have the email induction too, just to say that they are official members. So just wanted to point those things out. There are some forms too. One thing I'll say is make sure you pull the forms off the website, because there's some old forms that may be floating on some people's personal PCs. We want to make sure it's the most up-to-date form so our members are starting with the right stuff. So the forms that are out there, number 1 is the application. Number 2 is the overview. So this will give them an idea of what Rotary is about. Paul Harris, our different committees that are available, all the different ways you can be a part of it and volunteer. We'll also talk about dues and fees. And then we have the checklist. So thanks to Kent, he did an update on this, and we finally have this down to 1 page, but it's pretty straightforward checklist, and it's a great way for all new members to come on board and understand all the opportunities that are out there, and also get to meet a lot of new folks. And then we also have for the folks in the room who have some friends, neighbors, which I think that's everybody. We do have a recruiting sheet that you are welcome to print off and use to recruit new members. So those are pretty much it. So any questions anybody has in terms of the onboarding process? Well done, Lord. Thank you guys, appreciate it.
Thank you, Lori, for all the hard work you've done. As she mentioned, she's finishing up her 2-year commitment on the board, and she's just done a fabulous job. Kurt Brown is going to be stepping into her shoes, and we just want to make sure that when we bring on new members, that we're covering all our basis points, and so that they feel welcomed, but they also have a guidepost to go by so that they can become the best members ever. So thank you, Lori. Wanted to remind you on your tables, we do have the last newsletter. So if you didn't get it via email, or maybe you deleted it, please feel free to take a copy. There's a lot of really good information in there. Also, the listing of upcoming meetings. It's very important to note that May 5th, we're having our in-service meeting, but we won't be here. we're going to meet at the Dublin Rec Center. So please make sure that you make a note of it. Don't come here, come to the Dublin Rec Center, because we are going to help the city and the chamber get ready for the Dublin Community Service Day, which is Saturday, May 6th. Okay. Now, then there's something else on May 5th that you need to make sure you are aware of, and hopefully you've cleared your calendar for, and that is the Cinco de Mayo social hour. I don't know, well, I shouldn't call it a social hour. It is a progressive party dinner. Mike, did you want to share anything with the folks?
It is the best kind of party because you don't have to bring anything.
Ah.
It's only $15 per person. You won't even notice that getting invoiced to you, I'm sure. There will be food catered from Chili Verde, if you've heard of the Chili Verde. Quite good Mexican. There'll be some margaritas, sangrias, Mexican beers, probably Spanish wines. We're not aware of any really good Mexican ones, so. But it's gonna start at the Fields residence for cocktails and appetizers, and then move to our place for dinner. And prospective members and guests are welcome to come at no expense. And that's about it. I sent out the reminder invite this morning. I'll send it out one more time a week from now, and that's kind of, I'll stop expanding in emails, but we've got great registration, so it's gonna be a good time.
Mike,
Yes.
dress code somewhere else.
Yes.
They thought I voted against wires.
All right, thank you, Mike, for doing such a great job and putting that together. We have Pro-Am coming up May 31st, and I don't know if we've got, yes, John, do you have some things you want to remind folks?
It's exactly 40 days away. So we're the committee meets on Mondays at 4 o'clock just to go over things, and everything is in great shape. We just what we will ask the members who are buying tickets, if they're going to use them, whether they're going to give them to somebody to use or they're going to use them themselves. We're just about 10 days before, we're going to need some times for food and different things like that. So we have enough, or we don't have too much. So at the end of the day, and please tell all your friends, because last year we had a great turnout from outside people that really enjoyed it. And we hope to get those back and even more. So it's going to be a great time for a day of fellowship, and once again, not having to bring anything. Put yourself.
Perfect. Well, great. Thank you, John, and thank you to John and Dave
We're
for.
looking for silver sponsors, so.
Yes, we are still looking for some sponsors. So there is a sheet on your table as well. And those on the Zoom, I'll send this out to you too, so you get that. But on your table is a Pro-Am Day review, and on the back side is sponsorship information. So please make sure you take one of those with you. Okay. Cindy couldn't be here today, but she did ask me to ask, is there anyone in the room that has time available on their calendar May 3rd, which is a Wednesday, to do Meals on Wheels? May 3rd, Wednesday, 11 to 1. It's easy stuff. If John Susie can do it and I can do it, anybody can, right? Anyone? All right, well, look at your calendar, please. And it's really not hard, and it is a feel-good effort, and it probably really only takes about an hour and a half of your time. So, okay.
We have to go to the church on Bridge Street.
Right,
You don't have to go all the way down to like. So,
right. That's important. So you go to Bridge Street, you pick up your meals, the coolers, and then you take them to 5 to 7 homes, and you're done. And that's
here
it.
in Dublin.
Here in Dublin, yes. 11 to 1. Yeah. Okay.
Good GPS.
Yeah, bring a good GPS. Good point. All right. Any other announcements for this morning? No? Okay. With that, I'm going to turn it over to the Sergeant at Arms, Peter Georgeton.
All right, good morning, everybody. So today is Friday, April 21st. It's the 111th day of the year. And there's 254 days remaining in 2023. Our guests today are Garrett Dunham. Let's welcome Garrett. Guest of Andy Keeler, and then Mike Dickey from the Delaware Rotary Club. Mike, welcome. So on this day in history, in 1509, Henry VIII ascended the throne. In 1836, the Battle of San Jacinto took place during the Texas Revolution, where forces under Sam Houston defeated troops under Mexican General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna. So today in Texas is San Jacinto Day. And in 1962, the Seattle World's Fair opened. And today's the birthday of John Muir, the Scottish American environmentalist and author. 1926, Queen Elizabeth II, the late Queen, was born. And then in 1947, James Newell Osterberg Jr. was born, otherwise known as Iggy Pop, the singer. So for today, I've got a trivia question for all of you. Which noted author who died on this day in 1910 wrote this passage? He says, "I came in with Halley's Comet in 1835. It is coming again next year, and I expect to go out with it. It will be the greatest disappointment of my life if I don't go out with Halley's Comet. The Almighty has said, no doubt. Now here are these two unaccountable freaks. They came in together. They must go out together."
Samuel Clemens.
You got it. All right. So Mark Twain. So he died today and on this day in 1910, just 1 month before Halley's Comet arrived as a coincidence. So that is for all of you who didn't get that, that's $1. So we've got our drawing today. The small pot is $20. The large pot is $217. And Susan, I'll have you draw.
2259.
2259 847 2259. All right. So you got a choice. You can take the small pot, guarantee $20, or you can draw for the large pot. I'll take the small pot. All right. I don't think that's good. You absolutely can. So, all right. Thank you. And large pot.
It's digging very deep. 2260.
You didn't even have to make that choice. All right, we'll do our drawing afterwards. I'll conclude my presentation and we can introduce our speaker. So thank you.
Good, great.
I promise you, I dug into that basket. How could I get one ticket and then the next one lined up? That's impossible. Anyway, we have a great speaker this morning, and I'm going to have Calvin come on up and make the introduction.
Thank you. Oh, good morning. We are fortunate to have today as our speaker, Scott Lockhart, which is the executive manager for Affinity of Columbus. So he was kind of put on the spot and we're asked to speak quickly on a short notice. So he threw together his bio. So I'll kind of read it for you real quick. He's 27 years old. Oh, wait a minute. I'm sure. 47 years old, he says. Now, April 6th was his birthday. So the last 34 years in Northeast Ohio, he lived in East Liverpool, Ohio, from birth until 13, when his father oil company built a plant in Strongsville, Ohio. College University of Rochester, degree in political science, film studies. two-sport college athlete, flash in the pants stint with the Montreal Expos minor league system in 1994. Worked at IMG Motorsports in 97 and 98. Spent the last 20 years with a family-owned Ford dealership owned by the closest friend of 34 years. Married with 4 kids, 2 boys, 2 girls. Ryan is 26 in the car business. Justin, 23, is retired U.S. Army Airborne Contract 40 Ranger. Lauren, 20, second year at OU. Ashley, 19, home finding her way. Could apply to a lot of us, couldn't it?
Yeah.
Wife is the medical field as a practice manager. Went to high school together. We joked that we got our bad marriage out of the way so her and I could have our good one together. We grew up on the same street in Brunswick, Ohio. She was born in Columbus, used to spend her summers here in Dublin with her aunt and uncle, used to babysit Brady Quinn. Past member of the Strongville Rotary Club, became the new executive manager at Infinity of Columbus on February 23rd of this year. And they're going to be moving into Dublin May 1st. He reached out to Lou Shirobi for our car show. And so that was nice. So Lou's made the contact and so Lou coerced him into joining and I coerced him into speaking. So he's off to a fast start. Scott, without any further ado, welcome.
Thank you, everybody. First and foremost, I just want to say, being a past Rotarian, I look out in this room and I see a ton of people who give themselves to not just our community, because I can say our community now, because on May 1st I get keys, but to the state of Ohio, our country, and people around the world. So having been a Rotarian, it is my pleasure to be able to speak in front of all of you, knowing the time and commitment that you give to others, which is the basis of Rotary, service to others. Thanks, Calvin, for the bio. I'll have to send a thank you note to the person who wrote that. That was not a clerical error at 27. I believe it's basically how old you feel. So at some point I might hit puberty. I tell people, especially my staff coming down here, I said, the moment that I'm not a 12-year-old kid working for you is the moment I probably need to move on. I'm excited. Everything I do, it's funny the way this all got thrown together. Everything I do is all in. Nothing is slow. My OCD keeps me moving. But it all works for me. So I know you guys are interested in the car market. The AV slideshow would have been a big frowny face, just so you know. Most of you read the news, you read articles, you watch TV, and it is a very volatile market that we have in my industry. The worst part about excuses is sometimes they are valid. There has been a series of events that I could say nothing more than just a perfect storm. Obviously, we all went through the pandemic together. State of Ohio, and I'll use the state of Pennsylvania as the example of how this all started. You have the state of Ohio that had deemed automotive industry as a necessary business. Service departments, parts departments, sales departments were allowed to stay open. So at that point in 2020, I had just got back from the NADA conference in February, and then March was the shutdown. We managed to stay open during that time period. The state of Pennsylvania, however, closed. And so what happened was all of the Ohio dealers bought all of the inventory from the state of Pennsylvania and sold it in Ohio. So throughout 2020 and into 2021, state of Ohio was wonderful. It was, we were living on a pretty good high. Where you guys were getting hit was in the used car market. The used car market, as you have seen, it's just a mess. There's no polite way of saying it. It's a disaster. That stemmed from that new inventory shortages that started taking place. The example I use in 2021, I would watch the guys on their auction. They would do all online auctions. And I watched a 2019 Toyota 4Runner TRD. That was, now this is in 21, so it was a couple years old. It had 22,000 miles on it. The original window sticker of that car was 42,800, I believe. That car sold at auction for $46,000. A 2-year-old used car that went for $4,000 over its original window sticker. And that trend continued through all of 21 and, as you know, well into 22. And they've been trying to correct the market. The industry could have corrected itself on its own. Unfortunately, there's some other valid excuses. All of you, especially Calvin in the banking system, we in the last, 12 to 18 months, how many Fed rate hikes have we seen? 3, 4. Another example, my wife, my parting gift at Ford was return 2 free cars and buy a new one. But she had waited for her Bronco. And when I ordered it in February of 22, I believe, February of 22, the rate had gone up to, on a lease, to 4.65 on a lease. Normally, we're accustomed to leasing markets of money factors, of triple zeros, and rates in the 1.2, 1.5, 0.25. 3 was outrageous. Like, people were like losing their minds over a 3% lease factor. When that car came in and we did the paperwork in January of this year, the lease rate that I paid for that car was 8.64. The lease rate, 8.64. Currently, right now, I can speak with Infinity. We're running somewhere in the 5.65 to 8.65 lease rates. All of you know what the buy rates are. They're anywhere, the 2.9, 4.9s, the standard 60-month rate that we quote payments at is 8.5. So, obviously the way I look at it is we're trying to prevent something that's inevitable. My personal opinion is just let it happen. Like, let us dip into this for a second. If we would have done it 6 months ago, we'd been on the back half coming out. We would have survived. For us personally at Infinity, obviously I made the jump from domestic to luxury. It was the best decision I've ever made in my life. I was telling some people this morning, at the end of November, I was physically, mentally, emotionally, and more importantly, spiritually just tired. So I took December off. And first week of January, I met with my best friend and our wives. We had dinner and I said, I think it's time for the birdie to leave the nest. And I took January off. And then my wife said, your semi-retirement stay-at-home dog dad days have got to come to an end. I know Lola's loving it, but you're entirely too antsy. I said, I was antsy 3 weeks ago. And then God placed a gentleman by the name of Tim Russell in our lives. And I came down here on February 22nd. My first day at Infinity of Columbus was February 23rd. When I got here, I have an amazing group of people as a staff. Unfortunately, they had been through a couple of years of really bad leadership. Everybody was in self-survival mode, and the market and the industry didn't help. So I told everybody we're going to heal from the inside out. And I took that first month and I made promises, and I led those promises with examples. As far as what I do in the mornings, we still drive every day. I did start staying down here in some local hotels the last couple of weeks, but it's been an amazing journey for our family. We have an amazing series of new products coming out. For those of you driving luxury brand vehicles, I know Calvin has had some Infinities in his family. We have a new QX60 that came out last year. It's a wonderful mid-size SUV. It's the only third row. So I would equate it to your Chevy Traverses, your Ford Explorers. Luxury wise, I don't even know if BMW does a third row, probably in the X7. You look at Audi would be probably Q7, Q8, or some of your comparisons. I feel like we're in that mid-level luxury market. I feel like you have your tier ones, your Porsche, Maserati, things of those end. Then you dip into the like BMW, Audi, Mercedes-Benz. And then you have Lexus, Acura, Infinity. We're seeing a ton of people walk down from the BMW, Audi, Mercedes line. An example, a Mercedes-Benz S550 class, your lease payment's probably somewhere in the $2,200 to $2,500 a month range. It used to be $1,200. And those are things that I'm feeding and hopefully we get an adjustment. I didn't want to spend too much time talking about that because I wanted to do a Q&A. Calvin had mentioned about talking about the chip and semiconductor shortage and how that has affected us. It is extremely simple. Or I'll take a complicated scenario and make it simple for all of us. Back at the beginning of the pandemic, you've seen your big three, Ford, GM, and Chrysler, take their plants, their assembly line plants, and transfer over to building PPE products. Because of UAW contracts, those three had to keep their line, they had to keep the people workers. They had to keep their union workers employed. Otherwise, they were just going to be paying out because they're on guaranteed contracts. So when they did that, they shut production down. That's where the inventory shortage starts, and that's also where the used car market starts. So there's some correlation to that. I can speak on Ford's end only. Ford canceled at that time their chip orders because they didn't want to pay for something that they knew they weren't going to be able to utilize and build. It was a simple supply-demand economic value of we don't want hundreds of millions of dollars of semiconductor chips sitting on our shelves that we can't use. So they called there's multiple chip companies. The big one in Japan is Renesas. They canceled their orders. So did a number of other manufacturers. Then fast forward to the end of the pandemic, Ford calls and says, hey, send us our chips, we're ready to go. And Renesas said, what are you talking about? You canceled your order. And we took those chips and we built electronic devices because during the pandemic, what happened? Everybody bought phones, tablets, iPhones, TVs. They did a lot of electronic purchases. So those chips were utilized in the electronic industry. So when the big auto manufacturers wanted their chips, they weren't there. And then couple it with the additional perfect storm scenario, half of Renesas burned down. So one of the chip manufacturers globally had a major fire and half of it burnt down. So now you have an even further delay on chip production. So now at this point, you have dealers who have exhausted their new car inventories. And now the only thing available is used cars. Hence, watching an auction of a 2-year-old Toyota go for $4,000 above sticker. I've seen F-250 Super Duties go for $15,000 to $20,000 over the original sticker, and these are 3- and 4-year-old trucks. The market changes weekly. What I have to change prices on a weekly basis on the used car market just to stay competitive with other dealerships. Somebody had asked a question about how many chips actually go into a car. These chips we're talking about fit on the end of your pinky. So I used to think it was like the motherboard in your hard drive of your PCU. It was like a big thing. You slide it into the car and you're done. I was like, you know, how can we be short of those? Just put it in and go. It doesn't work that way. An F-150 Platinum truck has 1,400 chips in it. That's one car, 1,400. So how it works, your power windows, probably 6 chips. Your infotainment center, your navigation, your big screens, 200 or 300. Your ABS brake module that tells the car to stop when you hit the brake, probably a dozen or so chips in those modules. So that's the problem. The other issue was the auto industry was on a 5-year delay with their technology to what the chip manufacturers were making. So Intel, Renesas, those places, they were actually making a chip that was 5 years advanced to what the auto industry was using. So for the chip manufacturer, they have to kind of dummy back to make the auto industry chip. It's a different chip because the auto industry hadn't caught up. So it was a perfect storm. So there's your brief synopsis, Cliff's notes on the chip dilemma. So let's do Q&A, like questions and answers. Yes, sir.
We had
a very terrible storm in southwest Florida this past fall. A lot of damage, a lot of homes. We hear about those. We have a fellow Rotarian brother who's gave me a call in the morning to ask about the storm, and I asked him, and he said, well, I just got a call 10 minutes ago that Chris's car is floating out in the Gulf of Mexico. And many of my other friends that are down there had car damage because the water came into the garages. And my question, Scott, is what happens to those used cars that effectively are totaled? But we hear stories about, boy, you better be careful because they'll be back on the market someplace. How does that run through the system? What's the default for protection of consumers?
There isn't much, in all honesty. It is one of the things that we have to concern ourselves with, because those same vehicles that are down there that have that flood damage, those vehicles are dried out. They hire very, very good detailing companies who specialize in like hazardous stuff. There's actually a kid locally who, through marriage, I'm related to, Cameron Smith. He's Mannheim's preferred detailer for that type of stuff. They go in, they clean it. Now, what should happen legally for the consumer is the title is branded as a salvage title so that there's some legal protection there. As a dealer, my protection to my customers is that I have to research that vehicle. I generally, something like that, when that happens, I put a hold on anything coming out of that state or that region for quite a while. There have been Texas floods, Houston, the hurricane. Anytime there's a natural disaster that involves the damage of vehicles, you got to be careful. And as a consumer, your best practice is ask for the Carfax. Any dealer should give you a Carfax. It's free. Anybody tries to charge you for it, they're just trying to make money. It's free. Dealers pay that. That's a cost of doing business to dealers. So what you need to do there is ask for your Carfax. If it's something on a used car, your Carfax is going to tell you how many owners. It's also going to tell you where the car was bought and sold per dealer. It's going to tell you what, so you're going to see in that Carfax report whether that car came out of Florida or not. Anytime you see a car come out of a major region, a southern region after any kind of natural disaster, there's a red flag. Carfax does a good job of actually flagging it. So like, say you had an accident, you buy, anybody seen like, oh, your car has a bad Carfax report? You run a Carfax, say you had a front end collision. The moment it gets put to your insurance, Carfax picks that up and flags your vehicle as a damaged vehicle. It's now got a bad Carfax. It does give me the option of saying, okay, it was minor damage. It tells me where the damage was, whether it was front end, side impact, rear. It also will tell me if it's subframe damage. Those are some consumer practices that you can look at. So if you, in some cases, a bad Carfax, people are like, oh, hey, I'm saying it's got a bad Carfax. Have them go over the Carfax, go over the Carfax with your dealer and have them break down what type of, accident it was. Because in some cases, it could be something as simple as I pulled into the parking post at Kroger and I had to get the bumper fixed. Well, just by getting the bumper fixed and going through your insurance company, tags it as a bad Carfax. So in a lot of cases, you could get really nice used cars that have a bad Carfax. You just got to be diligent on learning what caused it to come up as a bad Carfax.
Where do you see new and used car prices going in the next 6 months or so? I mean, are they still trending up or coming back down?
So new is a perfect example. Yesterday, so I'm part of a 5-store auto group. Those of you locally, JDS Companies, Dan Schmidt is who owns our group. Yesterday, our Beechwood EM sent out something. We're now back to on the new side because inventories are increasing. I'm doing a 1 penny over invoice sales event through the rest of the month. So the MSRP side of things, yes, it's there. But now dealers, at least on our end, if you're like, hey, look, give me $1,000 off that car and you can sign me up right now. You're getting $1,000 off that car. I'm paid to move iron. And it doesn't do me any good sitting on my lot because I have a floor plan. I've got a floor plan. That car costs me per day. And the interest rates on floor plan haven't stayed low either. So the cost of having inventory. Same with used. Yeah, we could roll big dice. Right, put a roulette table up there. Like I said, I have to watch pricing weekly. About 5 weeks ago, Ford Expeditions had a $20,000 swing in a 72-hour period. Like I could have wholesaled and auctioned a Ford Expedition for, let's say, 55, and a week later they were back to 175. It is the simplest economic. I mean, at some point, those of you who have younger children, at some point, their economics class, when they start doing macroeconomics, they will use this time period of the auto industry as an example of supply and demand and how it affects the market. You know, down the road. Yes, sir.
Your percentage of EV sales obviously are starting to increase more and more and more. Is that the correct statement? Like in 5 years, are they going to be 30% of your sales?
No. Yeah. So I went through the process with Ford. I had the Mach-E and I went through the Lightning. Wonderful vehicles. The country is not networked to do it.
Is it regional?
It could be not even regional. It could be to the point where it's like community, local. I can only speak to those two EVs until they find a way to replenish in a timely manner at your local gas station. With Ford, one of the problems was, so Ford went through a process where this last year we had to make a decision. You could become an EV dealer. If you wanted to do only service and be able to service EVs, it was going to cost you $500,000 to upgrade your business. And you would be given 25 EVs throughout the year. You were going to be given 25 orders. You could have 25 new customers with EV. Or you could spend 1.2 million, same service stuff, but you could have unlimited amount of inventory on EVs. When I got here to the property on Tuller Road, I walked the lot and not a single charger. And then I was like, thank you. Just because it's so new and there's so many, it's volatile. There's a couple manufacturers who are obviously dialed in with it, Tesla being one. The big three, right now, everybody's playing catch up and they're rushing to market. Domestics have a horrible time. And they have a bad business model of they want to be the first, bigger, better, faster. So they rush things to market. I am convinced in Dearborn, there is a top level boardroom where they sit and say, hey, that Ford Pass app, does that work? About half the time. Okay, put it. We'll fix it later. Put it in so that we can market it. The one thing I have found with the exchange to luxury is, like in my case, my parent company is Nissan. A lot of what gets from Nissan is where it's tested. Nissan's where it's put to market. It does not hit my brand until it's dialed in and correct. Mercedes is a good example on the EV side. Mercedes might be the first to market, but I will tell you, they had this stuff probably 5-6 years ago, but they have waited until it's dialed in. There will be some manufacturers who go to that 50-50 deal. I believe personally that we're probably 15 to 20 years from seeing those types of 30, 40, 50% percentages of, ICE, internal combustion engine versus EV. So ICE versus EV, I think we're easily a decade away. The example I was given is on your street, if you have 6 people who have EVs and they're all wired to a 220 line, like a dryer line, and they all plug them in at the exact same time, you're probably going to blow your grid. That's the bigger problem, is the infrastructure of the electrical grids they're not built to handle that type. It'd be like everybody on your street calling all of a sudden, say, start your air conditioner, start your washer, start your dryer, and plug your car in. At some point, it's going to overload the grid. So until your major utility companies get the grids built up to handle it, they're trying to put that off on the dealers, the manufacturers. So I think it's a long process.
One more question. Last question, anyone?
I just want to say, Scott, I want to let everybody know that Infinity of Columbus at our car show has been a loyal sponsor and supporter of the car show from day one for 4 years. So I want to thank you. And I know you're new there, but you guys have been great. Thank you. Keep it up.
Yeah. Clearly, we will be a part of it this year and for years going forward. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. Look forward to getting to know all of you even more and looking forward to providing some service to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott, that was amazing. Thank you for educating us on and bringing us up to speed on so many things in the car industry. It was really an eye opener, and you did it with what, 48 hours notice? Is that right, Cal? So thank you very much for coming in today, and welcome to Dublin. We're very excited that you're going to be moving here. So that probably means that we have a space for you here in our Rotary Club. So we'll want to stay up to date on that. Okay, next week, our speaker is going to be Trent Smith. He is going to give us an update on the Franklinton development and what's going on down in Franklinton. Always amazing things happening down there as they continue to grow and expand. And then I'm going to leave you with a quote. This is from Carol Shelby. Carol Shelby. I've always been asked, what is my favorite car? And I've always said, my next one. With that, have a great weekend.